What's the one thing that people who like anime women really like? That's right, massive, teamy trains! Oh, did you think I was going to talk about something else? You clicked the video with a train in the thumbnail. Okay, wait. Before you go, what if I told you that because of the long and complicated history of American train law, that the trolley problem is already solved, and that if you pull the lever, America would treat you as a terrorist? Well, I already got you this far, so why not sit back, relax, and come along on this messy train history journey? I'm Adorabunny, and this is... So first, let's set the mood. Good enough. The United States railroad industry and train crime go hand in hand like America and childhood obesity. We have a deeply complicated history with both and are also #1 in the world at it. USA, 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 USA. Due to the western expansion of the United States in the 1830s and 1840s during the Jacksonian era, this freaking guy of United States history, the propagation of the idea of manifest destiny, otherwise known as state-mandated squatting, unless you're Irish or Italian, led to settlement of the western United States. Now we have Utah, everyone. Are you happy now? Are you? Are you? Now, while the precursor of the modern version of railroads had already existed as early as the 1700s, it was then used as a way to utilize horsepower to move heavy resources from mines and quarries. By the mid-1820s, the viability of steam power began to truly transform rail into what we know of it today, with the first steam-powered common carrier's completion, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, or BO for short. After the spread of the Gooner BO Railroad and other common carrier railroads in the eastern United States, the U.S. was ready to rail the West really hard. During the presidency of Franklin Pierce, the same guy who thought having Southern advisors would keep the country from devolving into civil war, spoiler alert, it did not. The United States tasked Jefferson Davis, the current Secretary of War, you know, the name the Secretary of Defense was called back when America was honest with what the Department of Defense did, to map 5 potential routes for the construction of a transcontinental railroad. Now, you might have a few questions. And yes, that Jefferson Davis is the same guy who became president of the Confederacy. And yes, we used the Department of War to survey railroads. I mean, when the people living on those lands at the times weren't really big fans of trains, or any Americans taking their land, who else was you send? The other, more boring reason was also because at the time, transportation across state lines was not a fully legally defined power of the US federal government. This would begin to be defined by the Interstate Commerce Act, which applied the Constitution's Commerce Clause to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, to also mean that they could regulate the railroads rates and construction, and then later aviation. Now, don't ask me constitutional law questions in the comments, as I'm not a lawyer or legal historian. I'm a freaking anime woman talking about trains with a boob joke counter in the corner of my screen. You're lucky I even looked information up in the Library of Congress instead of just copy and pasting from Wikipedia. But if you do have questions, leave a comment and I might even pin it. Who knows? YouTube comment replies can be full of surprises and you might actually get a good answer. Or something crazy. A toss-up, really. Back on topic, all this surveying then led to the Pacific Railroad Acts, a series of laws that began the practice of granting federal government-owned lands directly to corporations. Before that, land grants were only made by states to corporations. And nothing bad will surely ever happen from that. Anyways, this led to the construction of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroad and America's first transcontinental railroad. Now that we have the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroad built, we get to the next bit of history. Now, you might notice we haven't really talked about train law. But don't worry, now that we have trains, with it comes train law. So to start, a totally relevant hypothetical. If an anime woman shills her gamer subs code in Nebraska at an attraction made up of cars that look like Stonehenge, does anyone know the code? Yes, but only if someone is there to hear it because you forced them to go there off a lost bet. Use code Adora for 10% off at checkout at gamer subs. Mark, I'm sorry, please call me back. Much like nobody but Mark hearing that ad read, please use code Adora for 10% off at checkout at gamer subs. I don't have a sponsor for the video. The trains were alone with nobody to watch them and keep them safe. And with the rapid expansion of American territory, what were those poor, lonely trains going to do if some big, strong robber came by to plunder her lucrative depths? first. Thankfully, trains had promised themselves to no plundering before marriage, and with the protection of safes at the time, their train virginity was considered protected like a really elaborate chastity belt. But like any lock, there's always a way in, and that way in was really hot, explosive, and like the average virgin, quick to blow. Dynamite! Thank you, sweeted, you harlot. After that, railroads were no longer the impenetrable fortress the common carrier railroads thought they were. Everything was going tits up. And with these railroads traversing lands with nobody that cared to protect the sanctity of train merit, okay, maybe this metaphor has gone a bit too off the rails. After the Civil War and widespread adoption of dynamite around 1867, dynamite soon made robberies much easier, and train robberies began to happen all over the place and hit its peak around 1890. Early bandits as well were rarely caught due to nobody caring to protect the trains. So now, you're the US government, and you now have all these train crimes happening, but nobody caring to stop them. Now, imagine yourself as a politician, and you know a lot of train barons who give you lots of money are about to take away that money that they line your pockets with if you don't do something. So you're left with a few options. Option 1, give the train workers guns and make them defend the trains. But that would be silly. Why would they give their life to defend a silly little safe that isn't even theirs? Obviously, you could just make more police do that, but they were already doing whatever it is that they did in towns and cities in the West. Heavy drinking. Why would they go far out on horseback just to check up on trains? The railroads obviously don't like this and want it to stop and are willing to put money into stopping it. But what do? Bolster the US police force or arm the railroad employees? You do what America loves best. Privatization and make a bunch of train law. Nobody cared about protecting those poor defenseless trains, so someone had to do it. And since the US government already gave the railroad land grants to corporations, why not just also police the railroads with corporations too? What could go wrong? And so, the Pinkertons, then known as the Northwestern Police Agency, no relation to the college, were the man for the job. In between their union busting, they also began to stop train crime. Did this save the railroads money? Hell no. For every dollar stolen, 5 was used to apprehend them. But dang it, justice had to be served, and nobody else was going to do it. It's about sending a message. Now, onto what you really came here for. Train law! We have these private police now, but they can't go around busting train robbers' heads without some laws. What exactly were those early train laws to help deter all that dang train crime? In the good old days where nothing bad ever happened and everything was great, they surely were fair and balanced. Let's check some of the first laws and see what the liberal nightmare hellscape of California was doing to these naughty train criminals. Let me check the notes. So in 1891, yes, right here, anyone who derails a train or unlawfully boards a train to rob it would be punished with death or life in prison. Now, this was over a century ago, so surely they updated that in the future. Since after all, if they just rob the train or steal some stuff and nobody gets hurt, it's just basically theft or normal robbery, but on a train, right? Oh god, it wasn't changed until 1977, and it still has the death penalty in cases of death of anyone from the robbery. Thankfully, state laws aren't enforced in train crime anymore. Thank you, Interstate Commerce Act we mentioned earlier. Now, the reason for the harsh punishments here was at the time, the US government believed that if you make the punishments graver, so when you actually do catch a train burglar, the shiny Pokemon hunt of police enforcement back then, they'll be made an example for other would-be train robbers and hopefully deter them. But why stop there? Why not just cut their head off and put them on a pike in the town square for all to see? It clearly worked for the Anglo-Saxons, so why not keep doing it? Now, with trains being a funny thing that often went across state lines, the US started to realize, oh shoot, maybe this should be a federal thing. And so, give it up for the US government, taking away states' rights once again to put train robbers' heads on pikes. Interestingly enough, the first federal laws in regards to train laws made by the US Congress was done in 1902, where a bit after America defeated the Spanish in the Spanish-American War, America said it deserved to sit at the big kids' table with their old abusive daddy, the English, and they wanted to do an imperialism and colonialism too, just like he does. Getting the irony of this and how their country was formed from a revolution as a former colony to another country, the US then fought the First Philippine Republic, who had just liberated themselves from Spanish colonial rule, and asserted their own colonial rule with turning the Philippines into their territory. Now, with America in the imperialism game, they had to make some laws. Some train laws! So in 1902, the US government made a lot of laws for their new colonial territory called the Philippine Organic Act. And one of those laws was train since trains are really good at moving stuff, and your colonial empire is only as powerful and rich as fast as you can steal that stuff. So we gotta protect that stuff. So this law also followed previous penal laws. However, America did get a little more lenient. Now, instead of the death penalty or life in prison, you'd instead see 20 years in prison or a $5,000 fine. It's getting off light, because obviously a Filipino person in 1902 could afford to pay the equivalent of $183,000 in today's money. Also, fun fact, but because this territory was governed not by its own district or department, but instead by the U.S. Department of War, in 1904, the U.S. Supreme Court determined that you did not have the right to trial by jury in the Philippines. Uh-oh. This law continued on in the books until 1948, when the U.S. revised Title 18, which covers all those fun crime laws, including the ones about trains. Now, it no longer had a section on territorial laws, since the U.S. after World War II realized, oh, maybe we shouldn't have colonies anymore. Now, revising this code, America clearly would put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this law. No, wait. They just copied it word for word from the colonial law and applied it to everyone in the US. I didn't realize James Somerton was an American politician in the 1940s, but hey, at least the laws about derailing trains thankfully did not originate from the US government equivalent of, let me copy your homework. I'll totally rewrite it and make it different. Previously, in 1940, the Federal Trainwreck Act was passed. Now, you might be wondering, Adora, how many times would these train laws about wrecking trains would actually get used? The old West days of train robberies are over. Why would anyone dare hurt the trains? Well, funny you might ask. As it turns out, there's been a few cases where the federal government decided to charge people with the specific train law. For our trolley problem hypothetical, one case is important. Yes, this was a video about a trolley problem hypothetical. We're finally here now. In 2000, in the case United States versus Goltz, a man by the name of Andrew Goltz had used a hammer to break a lock on a railroad switch. He then turned the switch and used plastic bags and a pizza box to cover up a reflector so that the train driver could not see that the switch was turned out. After this was done, the train then at high speed collided with several train cars, causing the death of the train conductor and serious injury to its engineer. His defense? It was supposed to be like a prank, bro? Good thing this would never happen in modern YouTube, right?
Oh my god!
Right?
Oh my freaking god!
And just like how the old "it's just a prank, bro" from YouTubers doesn't stop people from pressing charges, it also didn't stop it here either. Even though Goltz didn't know that throwing a train switch could derail a train or injure people on it, the act causing harm still meant he was charged with train law. However, the case did end up determining that the old punishment of life in prison was not the minimum for death caused by train law. So hey, progress. If you'd be interested to hear some of these cases, one includes burning a bridge down and another drunk driving a train, leave a comment and let me know you'd love to hear a follow-up video on these cases. Now, to answer your question, why again would you be a terrorist if you threw the switch in the trolley problem? Well, after years of these train laws, a certain event in 2001 happened, and after that, the Patriot Act was passed, which led to the revision of the criminal code, leading to train wreckage charges also being considered an act of domestic terrorism. Yay! Now, what does this change about punishments? Not really much, but it is a big, scary word that now clearly means we are safe and free. And trust me, they have sentenced a few cases since then. One such example led to fun sensationalist headlines such as with United States versus Wright, where a woman put a railroad shunt on tracks to protest oil trains. Now this act of terrorism included placing a shunt on the tracks, which would signal to the train driver that the tracks are occupied and that they should make an emergency stop. Now, no trains were derailed by this crime. However, a train slowing down is technically dangerous. Think about it. A big thing suddenly stops means it could easily derail. So, she was convicted and sentenced, although the sentence was below guidelines. The law has a maximum of 20 years, and she got a year and a day. Sure wouldn't get her very far among the cool kids in Guantanamo, though. But still, not bad for a convicted terrorist, if you think about it. So, now we know the US does convict these so-called train terrorists. Why would you be a terrorist if you threw the switch? Let's apply everything we learned today. Yay! Let's look at the trolley problem. First, imagine America still has trolleys. Beautiful, isn't it? Now, imagine you're in California. Scary, I know. Why are we in California? Because the lawyer I asked to help me research this video practices law there. Now, imagine you really like trains. That probably wasn't that hard if you got this far in the video. Now imagine you, a train enjoyer, going down to watch a trolley pass by to do whatever it is train enjoyers do. I don't know, take photos or jork to it? Finally, imagine as you arrive, you notice some weirdo, discount jigsaw wannabe that's really into outdated psychology thought experiments set up this trap.
Hello, viewer. I would like to play a game. So I heard you like trains. Before you is a device known as a trolley switch. 5 people have been tied up on one track where the trolley is currently heading. You can throw the switch, but if you do, you instead will kill one tied up on the other track. An innocent. Do you throw the switch?
Well, after watching this video, you now clearly know the correct answer is to do nothing. Throwing a railroad switch, as shown in United States vs. Goltz, was determined to mean you could still be charged with train law. As well, you do not have an affirmative duty to help the people in the weirdo jigsaw wannabes game, and affirmative duty to help does not include potentially derailing a train. So, if you threw the switch, you'd most likely be charged with 1 count of murder and an act of terrorism. And that's how you now become a terrorist for participating in a real-life trolley problem. Wait, Mark, I can explain. If you made it this far in the video, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel, as I have more videos like this one on the way and could really use your support for more of this kind of content. Also, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/Adora_bunny, where I stream rants like this video with all sorts of crazy characters. And if you're watching this video in the future, please click the end card and watch more fun videos like this one. Maybe it's the train court case video. Ooh, goodbye forever.